Hello and welcome to the Kristen Dalton Wolf Show, our Made to Be series where we're having deep talks about the things that can often make us feel really alone. And one of those is financial scarcity, when we're struggling and we don't want people to know, and what that can do in a marriage, how to stay strong in our marriage. And that's why I'm sitting down with two of my best friends today. Both of them are former Miss Californias, to find out how they were creative in times of financial scarcity and how they held their families together. You can watch and join us in this conversation on liftable.tv. Welcome to the Kristen Dalton Wolf Show, Made to Be series. Join me and some of my closest friends and mentors as we share deeply personal stories and wisdom that's going to help you get through tough times and experience the fullness of who God made you to be. Welcome to the becoming of who you were made to be. Y'all, I'm so happy you're here. I have my besties here.
Yeah, we're so excited to be here.
I'm so happy. I mean, I was going to say my sisters, but we're sisters in so many ways.
Yes, we
we're
are.
Crown sisters. You're Miss California USA, and then you crowned her.
That's Miss California USA.
We got two Miss California USAs up in here.
I know, and that's how we met you.
Yes.
Was that 11 years ago? 12 years ago?
It was 12 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, because I watched you compete at Miss USA before I competed, the year before, and I was like, that girl is pretty. I was already a fan. Then I won Miss USA, came and watched you, and then you ended up taking over and becoming Miss California.
A little bit of a transition.
We both had a controversial year.
We did. I did as well.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you did too.
We all.
Oh my gosh,
collectively were in it together.
Controversy.
Yes,
and maybe that's what gives us resilience, which is what we're going to talk about today.
Do it.
Yeah, for these made to be conversations, I thought about y'all and just the things that we go through as women and just people. And one of the biggest things that can break us or break a marriage apart is financial strain and financial hardship. We hear that all the time. And the two of you have been through it. But oh my gosh, you are such a picture of not just getting through, but really thriving. And you still love your husbands. And they still love you. And you still enjoy each other in the midst of a lot of stress and uncertainty. So we're going to dive in today to find out how in the heck two beauty queens keep their family together through financial uncertainty. All right, so Raquel, we're going to dive into your story first.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Well,
this is approved by my husband. I've had the conversation and let him know.
Yes. Well, then that's really cool about your husbands, by the way. They know what we're talking about, and they're both secure in their identities. And I know that y'all are women who cover your husbands. But so I was a part of the kind of beginning of this with you and Andrew, where your life really kind of turned upside down. I was a bridesmaid in your wedding. Y'all were planning your wedding, and then he lost his business, and you really lost everything and your way of life. And we knew that was happening with his restaurant, but we didn't really know what it was doing to your bank account.
Oh yeah.
And how that was actually impacting honeymoon plans and after newlywed life plans. So, can you talk about that story?
Yeah. So during that time, obviously I was planning a wedding. You were in it and you were invited to it, but you were at a different wedding at the time. And my husband owned a restaurant with his brother, and the restaurant was bought out by a big developer. They tripled his rent and basically forced them out of their space. And so my husband no longer had a form of income, and that was his only income for the past 7 or so years that I knew him. Yeah. And so
leading up to that, y'all like went on lavish trips. You were used to.
We were in Cabo quite often. We basically like we were denied no things. You know, if my husband wanted something, we got it. You know, like there was never a question about, do we have enough to afford that? It was like, no, we need to start living now, and this is the way that he liked to live. And so I easily adapted to that. I was like, well, if you're not worried about finances, I'm not worried about finances.
Great. Yeah. Totally on the same page, honey. Let's get married.
And granted, I mean, I had my own job. I had my own money. I had my own checks coming in and all that jazz. But it could not support our family or soon-to-be family or support us in marriage. So, you know, we basically used every last dollar that we had for the wedding. And then...
which y'all were really resourceful and savvy even in your wedding planning.
Oh yeah, because my husband was in the restaurant and hospitality industry, we were able to use a lot of like things that would otherwise cost a lot of people a lot of money. We were able to just use that and get everything at cost or like borrowed for free, and so it was really beautiful in that regard. And then, you know, when we were opening up the gifts and cashing the checks for from everyone who had gifted us for our wedding, it went by really quick. Like we didn't go on our honeymoon because we couldn't afford it. We had to use every dollar that was gifted to us basically to pay our basic bills. And then there was a period of time where we, you know, we didn't have an actual apartment, where we were sleeping on my brother-in-law's floor.
Yeah.
And then there was apartment was presented to us in a fourplex, but it was being remodeled. And so they were like, oh, you can stay here, but there's not a bathroom. And so we were like, well, we don't have a place to stay, so we'll take it. And I guess we don't need the bathroom. But they're like, you can use this other bathroom in this other fourplex, so should you need to use the restroom. And I remember one time in the middle of the night, we literally like had to obviously use the restroom. And so we're running across fourplexes to like use the restroom. And we're sleeping on the floor. Like we couldn't afford anything. We didn't have any money for anything, really.
What were you feeling during that time? Because we didn't even, as your friends and bridesmaids, really know what was going on.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if I can't actually point to what I was feeling other than like this was life, like this was happening. And it wasn't like a frozen state or anything. It was just like, okay, well, this clearly means that we need to find more jobs. We need to make more money. And so I wasn't at all like stern on my husband. I was very secure in knowing that he was going to find a way to support us. But of course, you know, people do crazy things when they're desperate. And so I was applying for jobs that like I would have never applied for. My husband took a bartending job after owning restaurants for 7 years. And then, you know, you just have to kind of figure it out, you know, and no one likes uncertainty. I don't think that's a very comfortable place to be in.
Yeah.
But I was in uncertainty with my new husband, and that made it a little bit easier. That, you know, like, in, you know, Philippians 4 verse 12 through 20, Paul talks about, I know what it is to have, and I know what it is to have not. I've learned the secret to success is, you know, basically the secret to content, and that is, you know, God gives me strength in all things. And so for me, before I met Andrew, I was very well aware of what it was to have not. I grew up in a trailer park. You know, it was very normal for me not to know, you know, if we were going to be able to pay the next bill or what kind of food was going to be on the table. And so with him, it was very lavish and very new and very exciting. And so when I found myself in the position of have not again, I was comforted by knowing, like,
I've done this before.
I know the secret to being content. Like, that's having strength in God. Like, I'll take my husband stripped down, empty, you know, and if that's what it takes to, you know, be filled up again, like I was for it. And it was a weird surrendering time where, like I said, I wasn't paralyzed at all. I was just like, this is marriage. We did very traditional vows, like, you know, for better or worse, for richer or poorer. And I did not think, of course, I'd be going to the, you know, immediate like life change where my husband didn't have a job or his businesses.
Yeah.
But you know, you just figure it out, you know, and as weird and uncomfortable and strange as that is, like, my husband was not resilient. He was never lazy in that regard. Like, and so I remember him going to take another job, a consulting job, and he took a taxi there because we didn't have a car. And I remember just thinking, go get him, Tiger. Like, praise the Lord they made taxis, because you wouldn't have a way to get there,
Yeah.
you know? So like everything was gratitude. It was like, praise the Lord, I got this nannying job that pays me $15 an hour, you know? Praise the Lord, you know, I'm knocking on doors selling quill and like selling paper to people that don't need paper.
Oh gosh, Raquel. The fact that your knee-jerk reaction through all of this is contentment and gratitude is that's really what stands out to me, because I don't think that would be my knee-jerk reaction. Like I think I would probably be mad, angry, disappointed, scared, and then I would be like, okay, how do I deal with these emotions? Oh yeah, I should be grateful, shouldn't I? Like I would have to really like train myself and remind myself. But it sounds like you didn't even, when I asked you how you felt through this, you're like, I don't even know how I felt.
Yeah.
Like it's like you didn't even, did you feel like you didn't have the space to feel, or you just went right into,
No.
oh, I've been here before?
No, I felt like I had permission to feel anything. Like Andrew didn't try to stifle that. No one tried to stifle it. I didn't have to pretend my way out of it. Like I just knew like this is marriage, like literally in action. Like I didn't marry money or comfort or security. I knew that. Like I married, it's funny, I'll be like, I married a Gemini. Like, and if you know what that means, is like I married someone who enjoys life, like who will make crazy decisions. Like he doesn't change. And I'm okay with that. Like I enjoy the adventure, but of course I didn't choose that adventure. I was just at that point along for the ride. And for me, like my reaction in those kind of situations is just like, okay, the only thing I can control this is me. And if I show anger or dislike for my husband or dislike for the situation, like I felt like that would not have been organic to me. Like I don't have
that wasn't even a part of who you are.
No, that's not who I am, you know, like I would have felt very out of body for that. Like like I said, like I'm not comfortable being uncomfortable. I just know that there's only so much that I can do in those situations. And that at that point I was just like, well, what can I do? It's in my capacity.
Yeah.
And what happened to my husband wasn't his fault, you know?
Yeah.
So all I could do was like, hey baby, like you got this. Like you go to that job interview, you're gonna call your taxi, you're gonna show up and you're gonna get the job, and you know, we're gonna get back to living like comfortably, you know, and having that security of money.
Yeah.
But up until that moment, like that, all I could think about was like, how does my husband need to be supported right now? And what is my role in this?
You were really strong for Andrew through this. And it sounds like your childhood really helped you. It gave you that training ground to prepare you for that moment. And for many moments after, you're like, oh, I know how to do this. I know how to survive. And we're strong women, but we're not strong all the time.
Oh no.
So what was did you ever have a breaking point or a weak moment where you're like, okay, I need help now?
Yeah. There was one moment in particular where my husband and I, we were in the parking garage of an apartment that we were paying for that we could not afford because my husband no longer had an income. And we had to put rent on my credit card. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to give you my credit card. I may have that limit, but I don't want to put our rent on my credit card.
Yeah.
Like, that was really uncomfortable for me. And then he just looked at me and he was like, I promise you, this will be the last time that you ever have to do something like this for us. Like, because he was certain that he was in charge of the next steps. And so we literally swiped my credit card for the amount of the rent. And I was just like, how did we get here? Like, what happens next month if we can't afford it, you know? And then
it's a moment of trust and
it was, you just don't think like, you just asked me to put all of it on a credit card in my name, like as two become one, you know,
gosh,
like let's do this, let's get in debt together. So that was a time where I was like I can't do that. We actually go back to that conversation quite often because it never happened again. I never had to use my credit card to pay our rent or a car payment or anything like that. And so we often reference that and talk about how God has pulled us out of the cave.
One of my favorite stories through this process is how God provided for you in this really magical way, almost so you didn't have to let people know what was going on, because you're like, I'm a rock, I'm strong, I can do this. And he was really gentle in meeting you there. Sometimes I feel like he almost like forces us to reach out to people. But in that case, he's like, it was you and him.
Yeah.
So, but you did call me this night.
I did.
After you found some serious provision in your couch.
Yeah.
So, what's up?
Yeah. No, so Andrew and I, we were in our fourplex apartment, had a toilet. We were very settled into it. And we were actually leaving for Vegas the next day because I had won free tickets from the Queen Latifah show, which is really funny. Totally different.
I remember this.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different show. And then, we were just sitting there on like 2 couches. We got our couches on Craigslist because we couldn't afford new ones. And so they all came from Craigslist. And the one I was sitting on had the seats sewn into them. So, of course, we cleaned them all and all that jazz. But mine had the seats sewn in. And so we're just sitting, and I put my hand down like this, and I feel plastic. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, we clean these couches. And I'm immediately thinking, like, what the heck did he put in these couches? And so I pull out the plastic, and inside is a white envelope, sealed. And then I'm like, oh, is this mail in like a Ziploc bag? That's really weird. And then I open up this sealed white envelope, and it was $7,000 in crisp $100 bills. And I was like,
wow.
I was like, did you put this here? And he's like, no. I was like, did we have this money this whole entire time and I had no idea? He's like, I didn't put that there. I was like, they got to be fake. So, of course, we had like the, bill counters around the house because he used to own a restaurant. So we were like, not counters, but the pens to see if it's real or not.
Yeah.
So I was like, they've got to be fake. And so I go, it's real. The next one, real. And it was all real. It was the craziest, gnarliest find ever.
No, I remember you calling me.
And I
like,
called
Kristen,
you.
I am shaking
know
right
what
now.
happened.
Your voice was trembling.
I don't know what happened.
But yeah, I mean, it's and we've heard these stories before of how literally people open their mailbox and find like a check
You
or
call it into the mail,
yeah, these moments of provision. But dang, 7,000, and we know that 7. Remember, we talked about how 7 is a number of completion.
Yeah.
But didn't that come after a very specific prayer, or what was happening? What led to that made it so magical?
So the following month, we were opening our restaurant, Social. So we didn't have enough money like to open Social. The fact that we were even opening a restaurant was totally like all God. We ended up partnering with someone who has owned many restaurants before and was like, we'll do all the financial backing if you guys want to do the entire build out, the naming convention, the whole 9 yards. And so we were like, oh, we can do that for sure. And then that $7,000 paid our rent up until he got his first check from Social. Like literally to the dollar.
That is so crazy.
It was really crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. And I said, like, we were going to Vegas the next day, and God said to me, if I can trust you with a little, I can trust you with a lot. So we didn't take any of the money with us. We didn't put it on black. We didn't do anything crazy. We left it all at home. The first thing we did actually is take one $100 bill, and we bought groceries. And Andrew bought them because I was so nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, if they're fake, I don't want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And he went and bought the groceries, came running from the grocery store. And I was like, why are you running? He's all, we got to go, baby. It was fake. I was all, then why do you have the groceries? He's all, I'm just kidding.
Oh my gosh. Heart racing.
Yeah, and so we used $100 bills to buy groceries. We left for Vegas the next day, and it was like I said, that was a free trip. And like I was pregnant.
Yeah, I remember.
I was 7 months pregnant with Carter.
Oh, there's the other 7. I knew there was another 7 in there somewhere.
I was
7 months pregnant.
Yeah.
You were provided with $7,000. That was just enough to cover your rent until Andrew got his first check.
His first check.
Okay, now I remember when you shared the story on Instagram, and you got comments where like people were like,
everybody,
how do you know it wasn't the former owners?
How do you know it was from God?
Right.
I'm like, we cleaned the couches. Like it was not from the former owners. Like we contacted everybody that we knew that came to our house. No one in their right mind was going to put $7,000 in our couch.
Yeah.
And we cleaned the couches. Like that's the first thing you do when you get anything from Craigslist. You clean it. You restore furniture. Yeah.
There's no explanation, and it's also like, let's just receive the gift. I mean, you did everything that was noble and in integrity. But gosh, that's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it was a really, I mean, and after that, like you just think about all the, like anytime that we're met with another bump in the road, I just always go back to the time where like God reminds me, remember when I delivered you. Remember the treasures I've left for you. You know, like look for those in your day. And so that's what I go back to. And those are that moment in particular is like, that's when he showed up, you know, like that's when he was like, hi, I'm here. Were you calling on me?
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you've noticed how every time you go through a new trial, if things like that have increased your faith. So it's almost like trials have less effect on you.
Well, they have effect, and I don't know if they have less effect. I just know as soon as it's like one of those things that we say, right? Like, you know, your test turns into a testimony. Like for me, it's like when there's a trial, I look for the treasure. I'm like, where's the treasure in this? Like, I'm faced with a trial. I'm like, there's something in this though for me, whether it's tangible.
Every time.
Every time.
Look for it.
And then it could show up that day or it could show up weeks down the road. But I just go, where is the treasure in that? And that's what I immediately turn to now. And granted, all of that comes because, like you said, my childhood, like this is a muscle I've been flexing and working on for a long time. So when that time came, I honestly don't know if like any other woman in Andrew's life would have been able to be that pillar for him during that time. But for me, it was just like, this is literally what I was made for. Like God literally made me on purpose for this reason. And I felt very strongly for a long time that one of my purposes was to be my husband's supporter, like was to be that supportive wife, because that's where he needed me to be. We're in a position now where, like I mentioned earlier, like God, I feel like God's called us out of the cave, and it feels like I am now doing other things that no longer need, you know, hey, Andrew, is it okay if I go head out and do this? Or are you okay with that? Or whatever. He's just like,
you don't have to run a purchase by
he's
to
like,
check your budget and stuff.
Yeah, this is your time. This is your moment, you know? And so it's a lot all the time, every day. Everything's a lot, you know?
Yeah.
And those moments, they prepare you for the next ones to follow, you know? And I think when we get uncomfortable, that's when things start getting shooken up again, you know? And so
what I love about what you've been through and who you are and your story is how you learned how to be content because of your childhood and the lack that you already had, that you had experienced, which helped you to be grateful for the little things when everything went crazy, or in those moments of lack again. But so then when you have like the blessing, like all the extra, it's like you're not really tied to it.
Yeah.
And isn't that like the biggest gift, to be able to be just I think that's the most powerful thing, to be content in all things.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I'm with the kids, when I'm with the boys, when I'm with Andrew, when I look at things, I don't have an attachment to them. Not to say I don't appreciate them and that I'm not grateful for what we have in our lives now. I just know that they're just things. Like if you don't have contentment in your heart for, like when you are in lack, if you don't have contentment in your heart when you have a lot, we're missing the point. Yeah. You know, we're missing the purpose, you know? And so
it's probably how you're able to move so many times and detox your house and simplay, because you're not tied to things.
Everything's replaceable. Yep. You know, like everything is literally replaceable. But, you know, the biggest treasures in my life now are my 2 sons and my husband, and everything else is just shelter during the rain. Everything else is just icing on the cake. You know, and
so beautiful.
Not to be like ungrateful for any of those things. It's just knowing that it's just temporary.
It's fleeting.
Yeah, it's temporary. Yeah. Like Carrie Underwood's song, you know, this is my temporary home. Like everything is in heaven, you know, and so we need to sell something, we sell it. You know, if we need to buy something or gift something, we do it. You know, and so I'm grateful for that.
I love that. There's so much freedom in that. And Tami, it makes me think of you just in the being able to release things and how things are temporary and how seasons are temporary, because you work in the entertainment industry, your husband is in the entertainment industry. So we don't get to rely on the 9 to 5 and the health insurance plan and the 401k and the bonuses. Like it's a contract to contract type thing. So y'all have experienced seasons of increase and amazingness, and then like in another season it's like, bye, we're done with you, and then suddenly you have some money left over, but you don't know when the next thing is going to come. So the temporary and the fleetingness. So in your story, you shared with me, a time where you literally didn't know how you were going to buy groceries. I mean, it's one thing when you're like, oh, how are we going to pay for, I don't know, health insurance or rent, because that's big. But when you get to the point where you're like, how are we going to buy groceries? That's a scary feat. That makes me scared. Like, I feel like a tightness in my chest right now. So how did you feel when you looked at your bank account and you were like, are we going to eat this week?
I think it's one of those things like Raquel, I grew up and we didn't have very much money. So I think in some ways God did definitely prepare us for those moments of having to lean and trust in him. But I was a new mom, and my oldest was, I don't even know, maybe not even a year old. And my husband was out of town for work. We had just paid all the bills, and I was like, I literally don't have money for like groceries. Like, what am I going to do? I didn't, like, for the basics. I had some things in my house, so I'm like, I just need like the milk and the cheese and like just your basic things you can make anything out of. I'm like, what am I going to do?
You can make anything out of, because Tami is a baker.
I can make anything. But I was like, what am I going to do? And one thing that God always tells me, like constantly, and this was, 7 years ago, to this day, still in any struggle that I go through, is he always reminds me of the verse in the Bible where he talks about the birds. And he says that, do the birds like store their seeds? Do they worry about their next meal? And no, like God provides for them. And it's like, you think about the most beautiful flowers out in a field. Like, do they worry about how they're going to look or how they're going to know? Like, God dresses them more beautiful than anything. And does he not care more for you than he does for the birds and the flowers? And God gives me that to like humble me when I start to get anxious and I start to worry. But with that particular time, I was praying about it. I'm like, okay, God. And I was always very humbled, where I didn't want to ask other people for help, and prideful. And I didn't want to ask people for help or tell them we were struggling, especially my parents, because we both chose careers in the entertainment industry. It wasn't a stable job, so I can't go be like, Mom, I need some help. So I was very...
you felt like you made that choice.
Yeah, I made that choice. I'm like, okay, how am I going to provide for my family right now? And I remember like praying about it, being like, okay, God, like I just need some of these basic things. If I could find $7,000 on a couch or something.
Hey, maybe this is an impartation today.
But I remember it was such a silly thing to anybody else. It would just be totally random. But one of my friends came over, and she had been grocery shopping, and she was like, can I bring my groceries in? Because I don't want to leave them in the car. I was like, of course. So she brought her groceries in, and she put some stuff in the fridge, and the rest of the stuff was still on the counter. We visited, we hung out. She left, and she grabbed her groceries. And when she started to drive away, I was like, oh, shoot, you forgot the stuff in the fridge. You forgot your milk and eggs and all those basic things I need. She was like, I don't want to turn around and come back. You just keep them. And I was like, it might have been to anybody else like not a nothing, but it was such a love note from God where you're like, you knew exactly what I needed. And I knew that in a few days we'd get paid again and we'd have the things, but he provided for me in that moment. And it reminded me of the birds again, like, you don't have to worry about your next meal. Like, I have you in my heart. I love you and I look out for you. And I think a lot of times our biggest struggles when we go through hardships is we make it about ourselves, and we try to, I've talked about this with you a lot, like we try to make ourselves God and that we're going to fix it all. And it's like with Raquel, you have to kind of surrender yourself to the situation and the circumstances and trusting God that he's going to provide and carry you through it, because we can't always fix the jobs, or there's things that are beyond our control.
Make people hire you.
Yeah, make someone hire you, or you can't control so many things, but if you can just trust in God in those moments, he does know. And sometimes it's just having to cry out to him in those moments of like, oh no, what am I going to do? And that anxiety of like, what's going to happen next, and just trusting that he will be there. And then he'll show up. It might not always be money in a couch, but it might just be milk. And also as a friend, sometimes you don't realize that one little thing you did for somebody was so specific. Like, she didn't know that leaving her groceries that day, but God was like, don't worry about it. Just grab some more later, because he knew that I needed it. And so I think it's like, we don't even realize sometimes that God's also using us in ways that might seem simple and trivial. You have no idea the impact it has on somebody else.
That's so true. Surrender. Surrender has been a theme that, it's definitely come up for me in my life lately. And I feel like it's come up in a few of our different conversations that I've had, is surrender. But I used to feel like that word is so mysterious. Like, what does that mean? And it also feels so scary. Like, surrender to what? And how do you do that? So, Tami, for you, you gave that verse about God cares about the birds of the air and the flowers of the earth. He cares about you more. And I think we know that verse. And when you sent it to me, I was like, yeah, I know that verse, but that I don't believe it or feel it a lot of the times. So I don't know. Like, do you feel it when you read that verse? Like, how do you feel surrendered and really trusting that is true when it's taken a long time?
Yeah.
A long time.
I think one thing that I've learned, and I still continue to learn, is that God never shows up on our time, like it's his time. And so in my 20s, there was a Christian song called Surrender. It's a Christian song, and it says, surrender, surrender, you whisper gently. You say I will be free. I know, but can't you see my dreams are me? And I think it's hard when you have these things you're holding on to, whatever those dreams could be. It could be a career, it could be finances, it could be whatever it is. We hold on to those things so tightly. And I remember seeing this like Instagram picture that was like passed around, and I sent it to my mom when she was kind of going through a hard time. It was a little girl holding this tiny teddy bear, and Jesus is reaching his hand out for it, and she's clinging to this teddy bear, but in the picture right behind Jesus's back is a giant, beautiful teddy bear. And I think that's what surrender is. It's like, it might be the one thing that to you means everything, but he has everything for you. Like, what we see and what he sees are totally different. His timing and our timing are always different. And it's not easy in those hardships or those times when you have nothing to just be like, oh, I surrender, that means no worries. Like, no. But those verses are there to remind you that, okay, for me, like when I hear the verse about the birds, and God reminds me not to be anxious about anything, but to trust into him, it reminds me that when I'm not in control, and that he loves me more than my anxiety. And there is we talk about, there is a spirit of fear and a spirit of anxiety, and those things are not from the Lord. Like, God gives us peace in our heart and our spirit. So when you start to feel those anxieties and those fears, like, that's not from God. And so that's Satan's sneaky little attacks and tricks onto your own life. So then it puts you in a different perspective when you look at those things. And then that verse has more power because you realize that you're fighting with something else.
Mm. Does that translate to how you interact with your husband, Buddy, during these times?
When we were dating, we dated long distance for 2 years, and we used to read relationship books together and Christian books together. And I remember my dad laughing at us, and he was like, your mom and I never needed counseling, or we never read all these things. Like, what are you guys doing? I thought you're supposed to be happy. I'm like, no, we are happy, but you don't buy home insurance when your house is on fire. Like, we want to know how to handle these things. We're good now, but one day it's going to be hard, and we want to know how we can face that. And I think for Buddy and I, we both are dreamers, and there is, I think probably as parents, it's terrifying to have two dreamers chasing this world together. But the one thing we have always had is a mutual love and respect for each other, just like Raquel and Andrew, where we believe in each other's dreams, and we're both willing to compromise. I shared with you, I have all these bird things right now. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Maybe you need a bird ring or bird tattoo or something.
There was this quote I saw the other day, and I'm totally going to butcher it, but it was beautiful. Basically what it said is that a successful marriage is made up of a bird's two wings. You need both wings if you're going to soar, and they have to work together. And I think that's how a relationship needs to be. And that's where Buddy and I are in a relationship. We both have to. There's times where maybe he doesn't have, a job because there's not work going on, but I can use skills that I have to help provide, for our family, or vice versa. If there's something that I need, we find ways to work together to continue, as opposed to fighting each other and stressing about it. We're thinking, okay, how together can we get through this? And I think it's important for couples to realize, it's okay to get scared and anxious sometimes, and sometimes things will be overwhelming, but you can choose to fight together to move forward, as opposed to fight and stay in it, And that's what happens, I think, why a lot of marriages can end because you get so caught up in that fight that you're no longer fighting for each other to get through something, that you're just fighting at each other, and then you're not going to succeed. You can't succeed if you have to refocus.
Chris and I just had this conversation the other day, because I feel like when we're in stress, we are bickery with each other. And I was reminded that, wait, we're on the same team. So I love the picture and the analogy of, well, do we want to have a happy marriage? Because if so, then I need to stop complaining and be the other wing of the plane or the bird, so I'm not miserable.
But it's true though. Yeah, you have to be able to work together through it, and it's not always easy. Like, I know there's sometimes when you're, you know, in a disagreement in your marriage, and the last thing that you want to do, like my husband's love language is physical touch, and like God will like whisper to my heart, like, just hold his hand right now, or like give it. And I'm like, I do not want to hug him right now. Like, I don't, but I have to choose to listen to, like, okay, but what does he need right now? And sometimes, not sometimes, all the time in a marriage, it's important to set our own pride aside and then remember and refocus on, like, what are their needs. We know their love languages. We know that their weaknesses, which is why it's easy for us to push each other's buttons. But like, how can we support each other in those weaknesses, and trying to remember that when we're angry.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, well, thank y'all for sharing your stories today. I love that it's like God can provide in a big way, but it was exactly what you needed. Like, y'all needed that gap of time before Andrew made his first check, or he can provide in something so small and specific, like milk and butter. But for us to just be aware and to keep our eyes open so we can see, like, oh, I can build trust and he will come through. So next time when we're on the struggle bus, we can surrender. So what would you say through this process of financial scarcity is your favorite part of who God made you to be?
I'm just grateful that, like you said, like my nickname growing up was Rocky, and like I've just always, my theme song in pageants was always Eye of the Tiger. Like I just feel like there's something, like it's very easy for me to surrender my ego and just say, like, what do you need? Yeah. Like, what does God need of me? Wow. And what does my husband need of me? Like, that's very easy for me because, like I said before, like it's just a muscle I've been using for a long time. Right. And so when it comes to scarcity, like I feel like I was made for this. Like I am the tiger. Like, you know, like I'm ready for the fight, you know, like put me in, coach. Like, you know, and so I just feel like I'm very equipped in that way, and I'm thankful that God has made me equipped for it.
Through those trials, they ended up being a blessing and making you to be rocky.
To be rocky.
Rocky, but also soft at the same time.
Yes.
Which we've talked about. The meaning of your name being lamb or you, which is soft and gentle. So you're strong and soft. Okay. Tami, what about you? What's through all of this, like when you reflect on yourself today, what's your favorite thing that God has pressed out in you through the trial?
I don't know what I can think about that. I think that one thing that God has like taught me through my life is to look for the love notes and those little God winks, because I think when I say my prayers like at night with our kids is I always pray for, you know, God's protection and for his blessing and his favor, and I always ask God that they recognize his love notes that he sends them. And I think it helps us get through the hard times when we are able to remember that there's a Father who loves us. And so his love notes sometimes aren't always coming in and fixing it, but I think of it as like my husband with my children. When they're struggling, sometimes he might see them struggle, and obviously he wants to intervene and fix it, but he knows that they're going to be stronger if they figure it out on their own. So he might just give them some tools to get through it. And I think that that's what God's taught me, is to not always look for him to come save us, but for him to give us those tools and those love notes so that we have the strength to get through it.
That sounds like wonder. Wonder. Which makes sense since you were talking about your children. Yeah. Childlike wonder.
That's Tami all day. Like in
her
backyard of her house.
And the rocky strength.
Yeah.
It's encouraging when we think of the fact that something is being beautifully pressed out in us through what could break us. when we look for it and when we have like those eyes of wonder and contentment. Y'all, thanks for being here.
We love you.
I love your stories.
Thanks for having us.
Y'all are my loves.
We love you.
I know we love you. It's fun to get to come hang out with you.
If you are someone like me who gets anxious at the idea of not having enough or financial scarcity, I hope this conversation really encouraged you today that if and when you are in a season like that, you can handle it. When you remember that you get to be content when you're in lack and when you're in plenty. And gratitude is the thing that really helps you get to that place of contentment. And then this beautiful thing called wonder that Tami really showed us, and just opening our eyes to the love notes and how God is showing up in ways that we could easily overlook if we weren't paying attention. So to connect with us on social media, which we would love, I am at Kristen J. Dalton. Tami is at Tami Farrell. And my friend Raquel is at Raquel Dorsey. And we want you to join us in all of our conversations here on liftable.tv.